have another interesting message for you ladies today, and this one is titled, It's Not About You. How's that? And it's taken almost entirely from 1 Kings chapter 19. And this, of course, is where we read about one of the greatest prophets of all of them in the Old Testament, and that, of course, was Elijah. Not Elisha, his successor, but the one and only Elijah. And prior to this chapter, Elijah has just had one of the greatest victories that any man or woman of God could possibly have. On top of Mount Carmel, with King Ahab and all of his officials and the false prophets of Baal, he has just called down fire upon the altar and consumed the altar that the prophets of Baal were powerless to call fire down upon. And in so doing, he's shown Ahab and everybody there that the God of Israel really is God. And then, of course, if that weren't enough, he also, by calling upon the name of the Lord, ends the 3-year drought. Now, you would think that after such an extravaganza as this, that Elijah would retire in peace and comfort to an air-conditioned villa on the Mediterranean, right? But nothing is further from the truth, because just one chapter later, in chapter 19, the magnificent wife of King Ahab, that of course would be Jezebel, calls upon really the military wing of Israel to pursue Elijah until he's dead. And so for the next 40 days, more or less, with God sustaining Elijah, and I'm paraphrasing chapter 19, you can read it for yourself, Elijah journeys to the original mountain where the law was given to Moses. And so he goes from Israel down into what is known as Saudi Arabia, I believe. And it's so interesting because once he gets there, God asks him a most unbelievable question. He says, "Why are you here?" And then, of course, you read the account. Elijah cries out, Lord, I've been zealous for you. I've stood by you, and everybody else has denied you. And now these people are attempting to kill me. And on it goes. And then later on in the chapter, God says the same thing to Elijah. He says, "Why are you here?" And all I can gather from this is that more or less Elijah wasn't really supposed to be there. He wasn't allowing God to motivate him. He wasn't standing in the power that the Lord had manifested in his life in chapter 18. Instead, he forgot that God was protecting him, and so he began to walk in fear. And so that's why God is asking him, "Why are you here?" And I dare say that we do the same thing in our own lives. We end up in places, in situations which we really have no business being in, but we're there because, like Elijah, we were motivated by fear. And then the next thing in this chapter, and this I consider to be probably the most profound aspect, at least for me, of chapter 19, is that after Elijah cries out to God, and he does this 2 times, right? You can read it. God doesn't really console him. No, God deals with Elijah's sorrow and misery by telling him that he has more work for Elijah to do. I want you to go back where you came from. I want you to anoint Jehu as king, and I want you to anoint Elisha as your successor, and on it goes. And so I guess from this, what I gather is that it was not about Elijah. In other words, in our walk with God, it's not about us. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about Jesus Christ. It's about the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Just some food for thought for both of you. God bless you both.